Hey, Emma Howitt here, and I'm here today with Jodie Sterling. I'm very, very excited. Apologies that we're a little bit late. We had some computer issues, but we're here now, which is the main thing. So I am really excited to have Jodie on. So what I generally do on here is I talk to people who have experiences that I think will be useful to my listeners, but generally it's really useful to me. So I was actually introduced to Jodie because she has written she's been a part of writing a number of books. And on top of that, she now helps other people launch books. And that's how a mutual friend of ours, Dave Goodfellow. So if nobody knows Dave, go and look at his book. He's just launched a fantastic book all about how to run your Airbnb. Yeah, there it is. I was actually thinking, I think it's in my book.
We'll give him a shameless plug, hey?
Exactly. So go and jump on and buy that. It is a great book. But the reason, Jodie and I were introduced is because I'm also introducing a book. As everyone knows, I'm really key on serviced accommodation and finding your goldmine area. Not just that, even in any property strategy. And in fact, I was speaking to a lady earlier today. She was kind of like, oh, I don't really know. I can't really find any properties. And it was kind of like, well, that's just because you haven't done your foundational due diligence. So that's why we're here today, is to find out all about Jodie and her experience in serviced accommodation, or whatever we want to call it, short-term rental, Airbnb, how she got to be like a real accolade now with her books, The Hospitable Host. So there's now 3 of them.
There's 3, and I will do a plug.
We'll plug all the way through, don't you worry. But fantastic. So if anyone has any questions all the way through, please do pop them down, and we'll do our best to respond. And obviously at the end we'll put a lot of links to where you can go and find Jodie as well. So look, Jodie, I've got loads and loads of questions ready for you, but let's jump in and just, for anyone who perhaps hasn't heard of you yet, please just give us a little bit of your background, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me on here today. And my apologies for being late. My computer decided to shut down as we were going live, so my fault there. So my name is Jodie Sterling, or some people call me Jodie Odlin. You may have heard both names. I am the founder of Tetbury Escapes, where I have a short-term rental business in the Cotswolds. You may hear from my accent, I'm not from the UK. Yes, I am Australian, and I now run my business partly from over in Sydney and partly from here in the Cotswolds. I'm back here at the moment because I attended the Short Stay Summit in London last week, and the Shorties, and we had a book launch there. I'm the founder of Hospitable Hosts, which is a business that started off with a book. It's basically this book here. I gathered 40 hosts from around the world to share their stories in a book. We used a publisher in the US to get that out into the world. It was very, very successful. There's some amazing hosts in there. And they all shared their story of how they got to be in the world of short-term rentals. We shared those gruesome stories about our guests that we all love, or maybe a guest that's allowed us to pivot in our business somewhat. And then people share their tips and ideas of how they started in the business and what it is like to be a hospitable host. Because when I was talking to people, I found there was a bit of a disconnect between the property market and the hospitality market, and you've really got to blend them both together to be successful in this business. So that's me.
Amazing. So I know there's just so much more to this, but yeah, I suppose you came from having sort of done a bit of research on you. You come from a totally hospitality based background, I understand.
Yes.
So and obviously that kind of brought you through. Just tell your sort of story, I suppose, just so for other people, how you got into hosting, Airbnb stays or short-term rental.
Sure. So a long time ago, I did go to hospitality management school, and that was my career. I traveled the world opening hotels for some of the big chains and training their staff and getting the operations right. I was in front of house, so that was always very exciting. So a lot of guest communication and guest interaction there. As I got older and started a family, I realized those hours weren't sustainable. So I leapt out of that industry and I just got into pure training. And then as my family grew, I did other things. But I traveled the world a lot. We took our children out of school for a number of years and just traveled extensively. And then we settled into the UK because I had some boys who needed to do their GCSEs. And we rented a property in the Cotswolds, and it came not with just one house, but two houses on the same property. And we wondered what we could do with the other one. And I thought, let's do this Airbnb thing. And that's really how it started. From there, it was very, very successful. I just fell into the area. I live in Tetbury, where King Charles lives, and we've got 3 big wedding venues. It's commutable to London. We seem to be a real meeting point for people who are coming up north to people coming down south or the west. They all gather here. Maybe they've been to school or university together. So it just worked. I would like to say I read a book like yours that was coming out, and I strategically chose the area, but it was more like the area chose us. So throughout lockdown, I started researching on the internet. I didn't even know this world existed of short-term rentals and all of these people. I just did my thing. It was very successful. So then I started looking at other properties in the town, because our property was just out of the town. And I got a few rent-to-rent properties, and it just built up and built up. And people saw me walking around the village with a washing basket under my arm, because at that stage I was still doing all the cleaning. And they were like, "What are you doing?" And I would let them know. And then word got out that's like, just if you've got a property, Jodie will manage it for you. So I have a mixture in my portfolio. I have a mixture of owned properties and managed properties, and then rent-to-rent properties. So I pretty much do it all.
Amazing. So you kind of went on this journey to, kind of fell into it, so to speak. I think you saw the opportunities.
Saw the opportunities, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And jumped on it, and clearly you're in a fantastic area as well. You not only then utilized your own properties, but you helped do others as well. So it's a real sort of a community approach there. So then how did it come to you deciding to share the knowledge of others in a book?
Well, as you know, in lockdown we couldn't connect, but except for online. Are we stuck?
No, I can see you. Keep going.
Oh, okay. You and I just froze like this.
You're all right. I can hear you. You keep going.
Okay. So in lockdown, no one could connect, but there was a lot of interest in an app called Clubhouse, where I remember actually listening to you speak as well on that. And I found it really interesting that there was people out there like me, and they were pretty passionate about what they did. And I started having conversations with people, and when hosts get together and share stories, it's always those yucky guests, or can you believe it? And actually, it was one of my cleaners and I were in one of my properties at that point, and the guest had done something which I don't even want to repeat. And she actually said, "Oh my gosh, if you could write a book about this," so it was a little seed there. And then I just started connecting with people, as I said, and I really found people's stories interesting and learning from them as well. And I just thought, well, hey, let's all get together and put together a book. So I was a part of Mark Simpson's Boostly group, and I approached him, and no one knew who I was. It was just like, hey, would you like to be in a book? Would you like to be in a book? And they're like, oh, who are you? Because they all knew each other. But I was welcomed into a big community, and people saw that it was going to be a really successful project. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of hours gathering 40 people together and then getting them to get their work in. So they all wrote a chapter and wrote a bio, and we submitted it, and it all got put together into a fabulous book, which is this one.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I did what Mark Simpson, actually talking about him, suggests that you do when you look at your reviews in booking.com. So I did the same for your book and all those 40 others, and it basically said, and I think there was over 40 odd reviews. I chucked them all through, and it talks about universally high praise from the UK and the US, earning perfect score for insightful and inspiring content. And then it also talks about the stories not only offer insight into business aspects, but also resonates on a personal level, inspiring readers. So yeah, it's overall a really must read book there. But what I'm fascinated about is how you can bring together so many different people, so many different stories into kind of one place, and have this offering. How were you able to kind of balance it out? That must have been quite or did you just go, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go and see what comes of it?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I was having this conversation. Actually, I have one of my authors, or one of the authors, staying with me at the moment in one of my properties. We went out for dinner last night, and we were talking about this, and we just had the book launch in London for Volume 3. And I get asked this all the time. And I would like to say I had this big dream or this grand plan that was executed, but it actually wasn't. But that seems to be my life anyway. It just fell into place, and people just kept popping in and saying, I'd love to share my story. And, being in a book, becoming a recognized author is a fantastic business card. It's a fantastic way to, get some credibility in the industry. You're sharing your story, and a lot of the stories are very, very personal as well. As you know, a lot of people in our industry have come from all walks of life, and they're really personal, interesting stories. And it just shows you that anyone can do it, really. And I think that's one of the exciting things about our industry. It's such a diverse group of people from all different backgrounds. And that's what I felt that needed to be shown and shared. And, the lady whose husband has just passed away, but she has 2 properties, she too can get into this industry and, make something more of her life, which maybe she felt that she couldn't do at that particular time. So when you read the book and read through the stories, everyone's come through it from all different angles of life. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it is, especially, I know when I talk to my mentees or whomever I'm talking to, and people are kind of like, oh, I'm, can I do this? And inherently, everyone has their own unique set of skills, and it fulfills something within that business. Now, can we all do absolutely everything? Of course not. Like, no. I was similar to you. I know you talk about having, done everything to start with. I was the same, and the same as you, had kids as well. So I had sort of the kids putting together furniture, helping do various things. And it's kind of, bringing that all together. I've now lost my train of thought as somebody's put an enormous question in there. But where was I going with that? Oh, that's completely blown me. So with this sort of your Oh, that was it. Yeah. So having sort of so many different skill sets, but actually we can't do everything. And in fairness, we shouldn't do everything. Now, it may be that the first few you have to do everything because
Sure.
financially, but those are the things that you know, sorry, Tima, but those are the things that help you get along your way. You are going to make mistakes, and that's perfectly fine.
Yes.
Just, you know, getting there and coming through it. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in seeing something like this where you can see where so many people can get inspiration, having these different stories, having all of these kind of different elements. So yeah, no, I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and because there are so many stories in there, you know, from men and women, and couples, there's something in there for everybody. And once it came out, I was getting so many calls and emails and said, I've read so and so's chapter and I've really resonated with that. Now I'm going to start a wedding venue, or now I'm going to, you know, jump ahead and get 2 more properties. And that was really exciting to see how the readers were, you know, how it was affecting their readers and what they were getting from it. And in fact, one of the ladies who contacted me, and she showed me her volume 1 book, and she had all the tips all highlighted, and she was like, look, this is what I've done. And now, and then she got to share her story in volume 2, and she's just, you know, her visibility has grown and grown and grown. And that's what part of being in a multi-author book does. You know, as you know, writing your own book, it's a huge task, and it can be lonely, and it can be, you know, is it good enough? You have all of those, you know, thoughts. Is it going to be good enough? Are people going to want to read it? But when you're in a multi-author book, you're supported by 39 other people, and we would get together on Zooms and talk about things, and we'd talk about our chapters. And you know, there was a couple of people who felt that they couldn't get their work through, and everyone rallied around and supported them. And it was really great. And it built the most phenomenal professional community that, you know, well, that I'm a part of. So, because these are all like a lot of the people that are in the book are the leaders of the industry from all around the world. So they stepped up, they shared their story, and a lot of them do have their own audiences of, you know, 2, 5, 10, 20,000 people. So it's a huge amount of people reading this book or their stories.
I love it. I love it. Because there's you know, as you're aware, in the UK, we're coming up to some maybe could be viewed as slightly turbulent times. There's some changes going on to what the maybe licensing, the planning permission. And so there's some people that feel really sort of fearful of this. And then there's obviously people that say very brash comments like, oh, it's the end of serviced accommodation and Airbnb, you know, never going to happen anymore. But what I see as exactly as you spoke about them, when we spoke about all these so many different things that you can do, you know, you can run anything from a wedding venue in a castle to, you know, a 2-bed flat, you know, just somewhere very random where you wouldn't consider going on holiday. And that's for contractors, and they do it incredibly well. You've got, I chatted to a chap the other day, and he worked in, the sort of events industry, very much around stag and hen do's. Like most people are terrified of having those kind of people in their property. He was really excited about that because he was so experienced in it. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And so it's so diverse, actually, that I think it's even more opportunity. If you imagine like an HMO, a house of multiple occupation, you've generally got, you know, students, kind of blue collar workers, and young professionals, and you know, kind of spit into there. Whereas in this, you could even, you know, put a yurt in your garden and run it for a certain number of days. So it is so incredibly diverse across so many ways. So the fact that you've kind of brought all of this together and allowed people to see these different elements, cause, as you say, people to go, oh, actually, maybe that would work for me. And I really like that. So no, that's brilliant. So when you talked about this, and this is what I find really incredible. So you basically, you know, you you've had your experience in life, and then you saw an opportunity with an extra house, so to speak, in a property that you were renting. You grew a business, and that really worked. We went then, Clubhouse comes along with the lockdown, and you see kind of, I'd really like to bring all these people together. You're clearly a connector.
Yes.
You do fantastic stuff of bringing people together.
Yeah.
So then you've got your book, but what is really interesting is you've just also launched an academy.
Yes.
People can come and actually literally get accredited through your platform. I mean, that, as you mentioned earlier, I don't think you actually planned that, did you?
No. No.
It was that kind of journey as well. So suddenly,
yeah, so
empowering so many people, and then suddenly it's turned into a whole nother beast, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think it was really because I started meeting all these people, and the people in the books, they were all interviewed. I like to work with people that I know who are going to, participate, and that they have an attitude like me, really, and that they're passionate about hospitality as well. It's not just all about property. So I think just after listening to people and listening to their stories, and then when we all meet up at conferences, like we go, there's not only the academy, but we speak at all conferences all around the world. There will be someone on one of the panels or a keynote speaker who is a hospitable host. And so just when we all meet up at these conferences and people are staying at short-term rentals, it's that whole thing of like, oh my God, you should see where I'm staying. They don't have a mattress protector, or the place wasn't even cleaned, and now the host wants me to clean it, or the fridge was full of food. And there was just all these stories. And so I know from interviewing all these people and looking at their profiles and diving deep into who they are before they're accepted into writing their story, I know that they're all professional. But there's millions of hosts out there, and there's thousands of them that aren't. And really, as you say, with all those changes that are coming about, you need to up your game in hospitality if you're going to be successful. And you may have the most beautiful property. This is my belief. You may have a really beautiful property, but if you're not doing the guest relations or the guest experience correctly, you're not going to get the reviews. And then if you don't have the reviews, you're not going to get more guests come and stay. And that's not just return guests, that's just new guests reading your reviews. So a number of us, kind of put our heads together, and look, that's what I used to do for 5-star hotels. I used to write training manuals and procedures. So I thought, well, let's try and do one for the hospitality sector in short-term rentals. And so then I gathered 22 of at that point, 46 authors, and they facilitated a module each, and we go through everything from, having a great mindset as a host, because that is a really good, starting point. That's the foundation. And we look at guest communication. We look at putting your listing together. We look at handling guest complaints, because not everybody knows how to do that correctly. And that is a make and break within guests. Then we have other people teaching others how to set up guests for certain guests, like guests with families, guests with pets, guests who are coming for weddings. And then we look at time management, and there's so many modules. There's 22 modules, in fact, altogether. And we're kicking it off on the 1st of July. We've got a big cohort that have registered already, which is super exciting. And then what we're doing at the end of people completing the course, if they'd like to be accredited hospitable hosts, they have to show through a certain criteria that they have implemented all of these things into their business, and then they're going to get an accreditation. And I've got big numbers, big hopes and dreams. This is what I do have. So I'd love to, get 20,000 people from around the world in the first year signed up as accredited hospitable hosts. We have our own booking platform, which they will be able to showcase their properties. And then we also have another platform that I've partnered with called My Perfect Host, who they can, as hosts, list themselves on it's almost like a host registry. So that's an exciting new project that we're partnered up with.
Wow.
Lots and lots.
That's absolutely incredible. And also such a beautiful kind of just unexpected result of something that you collaborated, brought a whole load of people together, and now they're all able to pool their knowledge, their resources, and help other people along the way. And there's definitely, you know, we can't know everything about everything. That's absolutely that's you know, really key. And I love the fact that you put in there all, you know, all the different things, because like mindset is a massive thing. I do an interview once a month about property and mindset, because you can have all the knowledge, but if you haven't got it right up here, it's going to be much more difficult. And things like managing guests, I absolutely love that, because I think certainly when you're starting out as a host, you kind of feel that you need to sort of almost bend over backwards, but sometimes a bit too much. Yes. And we do get people that unfortunately can try and take the mickey. And I had one of my mentees the other day, one of his first bookings, he'd managed to secure a really long-term booking. It was a bit cheaper, obviously, because it was a long-term booking. And this, there was one thing wrong, some cleaning thing had gone wrong, which was fine. He'd immediately, you know, amended that and done absolutely everything. But this family was still being really awful. And I said, look, you've just got to be very polite, but very firm, and literally say, look, I'm so sorry. I've bent over backwards for you. I've done everything, but it seems that, you know, I'm not able to answer the needs that you require for this stay. So if you'd like to go somewhere else, I'm happy to, you know, to cancel the booking and, you know, help you find somewhere else. Well, surprisingly enough, they suddenly said, oh, no, we'd really like to stay. It's actually really great. Yeah. But, you know, some people, you just have to kind of say, look, I've done everything that I can. I've really helped you out here. But it's when you're early on, you don't know about these things.
No, that's exactly right. It's all about having boundaries. And I like to say to people, you don't always get it right. You know, we're human. You've got a property, you know, that things go wrong. The boiler, especially in the UK, the boiler might go down, the heating might be out, you know, whatever that may be. And you don't always get it right. And if you don't get that 5-star review, I don't think you should beat yourself up about it, because if you know that you've done the best that you can, then that's fine. You're dealing with people, humans, and I hate to say it, but some people shouldn't be let out of the house because the expectation is huge. You know, I have 500-year-old properties in Tetbury, which are a little bit crumbly around the edges sometimes, and people come in thinking it's going to be like the Four Seasons in, you know, Thailand, and it's like, well, where's the view? Well, we don't have a view. I never said that in the listing that we have a view. You know, it's almost like they come to the country and they ask for the beach. It's like, where's the beach? Well, we don't have a beach here. So I think it's really important that with your listing, you know, you set the expectations for your guests then and there. And then you can also add a little bit of customer service in there as you go along, just so you guide them through along the whole guest experience. That's really important. Just be open with them. And like you said, you know, try and do what you can. And some people, you just cannot please them at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. It does seem to be that there are certain people that go on holiday, and I do see this more in the holiday makers than perhaps the people going for work.
Sure.
They kind of shut their front door, and then they lose all this kind of normal common sense knowledge. And I remember one of my favorite ones was outside. I had 6 apartments in one block, and outside was a one-way street, and they called up and they said, I mean, what am I supposed to do? There's a one-way street outside. I kind of like said, you live in London, don't you? Yes. I said, well, what would you do if you came to a one-way street in London? well, I'd go down it. I said, I suggest you do the same. I mean, I just was laughing so much because it just seems so crackers. But
Yeah.
that is where people can be where they're at, and they can have all these kind of issues. And what I'm, so keen to do, and I'm sure you touch it as well, in your academy, is just getting constant feedback as much as you can, just to understand that they're okay. So I love to have a little bit of a communication, and for some people that's a call, for some people that's a message, whether it's an email or whatever. And then once they've moved in, I like to have something like a ring cam where I can actually see that they've come in, and also make sure that there's not 15 of them in your 2-bed flat. And then then you might kind of immediately follow up as soon as they've sort of checked in, so to speak. And there's so many things that you can do, whether it's with a guest book or an online guest book, or whether it's literally again a message or a phone call. And then after 24 hours, because by that point, as you said, the boiler may not be working particularly well, or all of these things. So it's having this kind of constant feedback, which really sort of enables you to kind of understand where they're at, and fingers crossed, do everything that you can to continue to resolve those problems, to get a great review with things like that. So no, I absolutely like that. So you've seen so many hosts then, and you've probably kind of scrutinize them in the nicest possible way.
Sure.
What do you think makes a great host, do you think?
What makes a great host? Well, I think someone with a sense of humor and a great attitude is number one.
Yeah.
Really, for all those reasons we just discussed. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with humans. You don't always get it right, and people have great expectations. The other thing is just, being I think the listing is super important. Like if you can have a mediocre place. Like I have one of my properties, I actually don't like it. I would not stay there. I walk in there and go, oh my gosh, but I set it up. The photos are what it is. I have everything laid out as I have in the other properties, and people come and they love it because that's what they've chosen from the photos. So I think just being really honest and open with your guests as well, with what you're offering. I think that's really good. And I think, like you say, not thinking that you can do it all. You can't do it all. Someone once called me the queen of outsourcing, but it was just because I had a realization that I can't do it all, and it is a collaboration. Being an entrepreneur, I think you've got to do everything yourself, and you don't want to employ anyone because you want to invest that money back into the business. But you've got to look at long term. If you do invest into people, then you're going to be able to increase your bottom line even more because you've got more people working with you. So that's a really big realization, I think, too. But yes, I've met many, many hosts from all over the world. And as we said, everybody does it differently. Everyone has their own unique style. And I just think if you're upfront with the guests, they learn that unique style. And that's why maybe they've chosen you over somebody else. So just be open and upfront.
I love that. And in fact, it's really key, isn't it? So I'm a huge fan on being quite niche. And marketing, if you are marketing for contractors, market for contractors. If you are marketing for hen and stag do's, market for hen and stag do's. If you're marketing for weddings in a castle, then do that. But people often feel, don't they, with any kind of niching, that they're then restricting themselves. And exactly like you said, there's a property that you've got that you don't, you wouldn't necessarily go and stay. And I find that also that with my properties, they're basic, they're very lovely, really nice, very comfortable, all of those kind of things. But they are definitely not a place for a real sort of leisure. We don't have, loads of games. It's not a family environment, so to speak. We sometimes get leisure guests, who fall into that. Absolutely. But as you said, they've seen the pictures, they've seen what the offering is. And when they arrive, they know that that's what they're getting, and they're really happy with that.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think, so I think it's cool. And then you also, just touching on the automation side of things, you and I have so many similarities here. I'm a huge fan of, bringing in others or helping, or also, I always find that as we talked about, when you very first start out, you start out doing generally most of it yourself. And then things start to break, so to speak, not necessarily physical things,
yes,
but what you're doing starts to break. You will forget to respond to emails. You will forget that you haven't put loo rolls in one of the one of the loos or something like that. And all of these things I started to remember looking at things. Okay, well, how can I reduce human error? And whatever was the worst bit of human error that kept going on, I would try and sort of get something, whether it was a thing. So we started off with things like Trello and Asana, where it was kind of like, okay, so this booking has come in. These are the 10 things that we should have done. Have we done them? Tick, tick, tick. Oh, no, I've missed that one. I've missed that one. And then suddenly we started to get systems in place. I was then, later on able to hire an operations manager, and all of those kind of things suddenly help. But as you go along and you get bigger, again, something will break. And it's kind of like, okay, how can I now go back? And it's kind of like a constant growth, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And then as your team grows, it's more and more. You have to do the training. You have to have your SOPs in place. Like,
I love it.
There's a lot to it. Whoever said it's a side hustle, I don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. And I saw in another interview that you did that one of your children does tech or something like that.
Yes.
I love any kind of sort of tech. I'm not that techie myself, but I do love any way of kind of saving time by using sort of tech and things like that. So any advice that you've seen from somebody who's literally learning the coal face of what's changing in the sort of technology industry that you've been able to implement into your business, or those that you've seen others implementing?
Yeah, I think with the tech side of things, if you've got a small portfolio, just be careful not to get pulled into the whole tech thing, because it's an additional cost. B, it's something else that you have to learn, and you can do a lot of this just with basic tech. And if you try, like, you select the right PMS for you, and I can't say my one is going to work for somebody else because my needs are different. But if you pick the right one for you at that time, they may have that whole offering of a tech stack where you don't have to go off and go to other people. I work very closely with a lot of vendors as well. And every time I go to these conferences, there's more and more and more vendors. There's more PMSs, there's more channel managers, there's more insurance people. I think just try not to get blindsided by all the shiny objects, because there's so much out there, digital locks and changing your locks remotely and so on. All that is really great. But when you're just starting out, I personally think you don't need that. I'm running my business from the other side of the world. So I've put my time and effort into my team rather than my tech stack. Sure, I do have, automated messaging set up and so on. But, every Monday, a team member contacts everybody that's coming in that week and gives that personal service, as well as having all the automated messaging coming in, because a lot of people do still like the face-to-face or just the personal touch. So for me, it would be, don't get too blindsided by all the tech. There is tech out there for everything. And I know people bang on about how they hate Airbnb and so on, but really, if it wasn't for that business, a lot of those extra tech businesses wouldn't even be around, right? So just be careful. Don't buy into everything, because all your profits will go on your tech stack, and you don't need it. Everyone talks about get this. You don't need it, especially if you've got a smallish portfolio.
Totally agree. And I think, like, when people sort of boohoo on Airbnb and things like that, I think inherently we're kind of, well, you call it, I can't remember, you call it like the pulling down the flower or something in Australia. What is it that you call it?
Oh, small poppy syndrome. Pulling down the flower.
As the poppy grows up, you just want to pull it back down, and that's human nature, isn't it? Is we kind of like dispute things. But for me, I'm totally in agreement. Like when I think back at my very first property, I just spent crazy on so many things because I was, so excited and I wanted to make sure I was offering the best, and I gave them this and this, and now I just say to people, just go with the resources that you have. So it may be, so for instance, I literally live in the middle of nowhere, so for me to get to a property, it takes a long time for me to get there. And for me, I do love, my brand is eco-conscious high tech, and so part of that was, for me, I love, what are they called, smart locks.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in our hotel, we have just all smart locks, and I love all that. But I've just got a new rent to rent, and I've just got lockbox, and I'm perfectly happy with that. The door didn't really suit, it didn't really need it at all. My ops manager lives 5 minutes away from the property. I didn't need to spend that money, and it was actually really liberating to go, oh, I don't need to spend that money.
Yes,
because it does add another complexity, of course, to all those things. So it's also, isn't it, it's about your own resources and what you've got and how you work into it. So again, for me, I know, like you talked about, some people want face to face. I knew that was never, ever going to be part of my business. I just couldn't do that with my family. I lived too far away. I didn't want to do that. So therefore, I kind of made sure that my business worked and my guests still felt really loved. They didn't have to meet me.
Yes.
So those kind of things, I think are, incredibly sort of key. Have you seen, talking about that sort of branding side of things, have you seen that, a lot of the people that you've seen over the years and you've worked with, that branding is really important?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, branding is really important, and you become your brand, not just your properties. I think that's really important because, actually, it's quite funny. I have a copy of the book in every one of my properties, and so do most of the other authors who are in the book. That was one of the ways that we got the book out there and letting people know who we are. And I sometimes meet the guests in the street and they're like, oh, because my photo's in there. Oh, you're Jodie from the property. And I said, yes, I am. Oh, wow, we loved your story. And because I'm not there to share with people, if I do ever get to meet my guests, they're like, oh, why did you come to Tetbury? And like, you're Australian. Of course, they all talk about the weather, but,
English, that's all we talk about.
Yes, I know. So I think it's a really nice way for guests to get to know you and your brand, is by making your brand personal, not just, a logo and colors. It's really, you have to step into it as well, so people know who you are. And whether that's just by your own voice with your messaging, your automated messaging, whether it's a video welcome rather than just, a bit of text. There's so many ways that you can do it. But yes, I found that the branding of the properties it also makes you look more professional, I think, if you want to have this as a business.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, I had a few months before getting my very first property. So I feel really fortunate. I had this kind of couple of months where I was able to plan everything and do everything. And I created this brand. And from that, I've actually won, I think it's 3 or 4 awards now. And they've been purely around my brand.
Oh, and congratulations.
That was literally it. And you just kind of think, wow, it's so powerful. And all of those parts you said was all about yourself. And it really was. It was all about what I wanted to experience and what I wanted to do. And that actually goes back to one of the points you mentioned earlier, is whether anyone can do it. I mean, I think if anyone's ever been to an Airbnb, you kind of know what you want to experience. So you want to just kind of
of course. Anyone who's gone away on holiday, whether it's to a hotel or a campground or, you know, a yurt, like you said before, you know, if you've had a good experience, you could do that for somebody else. So I know people who have, you know, got a little caravan in their back garden, and they, you know, or what they call them over here, shepherd's hut, or a shepherd's hut, or just something, that people can stay in. It's you can do so much with that.
In fact, on my my wedding night, we were kind of we got married in the, you know, middle of the country, and rather than, you know, catching a long taxi drive over to our nearest town, we actually went and stayed in a shepherd's hut, and it was fabulous. It was really fun. You know, like in the middle of nowhere. We woke up the next day, it was just quiet, and for us that was just perfect. So there's always a stay for kind of every occasion. So Tima has been putting in some fantastic questions in there, and really interacting. And one of the things I really would love to cover, we'll cover obviously both, but she says, is staycation becoming less popular in the UK? And I know, you know, we have sort of spoken about the industry as a whole as well. How do you feel about this kind of, because obviously, you know, what was 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't such a thing. Airbnb has created this kind of this new way of, whether it's just renting out an extra room or you know, just highlighted this very different way of going away, whether it's for work or for play or whatever. So do you think it's becoming, you know, staying at home perhaps and having these experiences is becoming less popular?
I personally don't think so. Like with what I'm hearing, you know, I was at this big event in London last week, and no, the statistics show it's just as popular now and growing as it was, you know, just after COVID. I know everybody had explosive bookings, and it was such a great time to be in the industry. And yes, things have petered down, especially over the winter for me. Because of cost of living and all those other things, you know, to go away for a weekend is a luxury. But there are a lot of people out there that are still coming away. And I know there's a lot that can't afford to go, but there is still a big group of the population that are. But it's across the board too. Like I hear it in Canada, I hear it in America, in Australia, certainly. The last maybe 3, 4, 5 months has been very quiet. But the statistics show, and I've listened to some of the big people talk, you know, booking.com, and even I attended a talk at the in Australia, and it was the head of tourism for Australia, and it's just kicking off everywhere. More and more people are still traveling, so I wouldn't be put off. You may just have to learn to offer something a little bit different, maybe more of a guest experience rather than just a place to stay. You know, like, and there's so many little things that you can do depending on where you are, of course. But for instance, I in my village, or it's a town really, I've got the local community involved. So I've set up, you know, arrangements with them that my guests can go into the local butcher and get a breakfast pack. And, you know, I create these little coffee vouchers, and rather than having a welcome hamper with, you know, milk that the person doesn't drink because they're dairy intolerant, or bread, a loaf of bread that they can't eat because they're gluten free. You know, I've gone and created this little thing where it's have coffee on me, and they get a couple of tokens. They go and use it in the local cafes. I pay for it at the end of the month, but it allows my community to get involved with my guests, because otherwise they could just sit in the property and make their own coffee. But if they go out, they have coffee on me, and then they may have a cake or order breakfast or something else. So it's just all those little things that you can do to create a better guest experience. And I believe that's what people are coming away to do now. Like people actually, I've seen the research, people actually book their accommodation from what is available in the area. So they might think, oh, I want to go, let's say paddleboarding or walking in the countryside. So that's why they choose how they're choosing their accommodation. It's not like, oh, I want to go to Tetbury. I'm going to book somewhere in Tetbury and then find out what to do. They're apparently all looking at what's available first. So if you can have that in your listings as well, I think that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, I love that. And I do feel that there's actually more opportunity to go away. So whereas, you know, in the olden days, it would kind of like be your one holiday a year.
Sure.
Kind of that was it. That's all you'd think of. Whereas nowadays, it is so much more accessible. You know, people just actually going away. Like I love, because I'm not very good at just sitting around doing nothing. So I love this whole thought of going away on I can't remember what you call it, but you know, it's a holiday, but you're working as well. So you take your family away and you might work for, let's say, two or 3 hours in the morning, and then you go and, you know, all spend the time together on this holiday. So it means that you can actually spend perhaps the whole of the summer holidays together.
Yes.
But still, you're sort of doing that thing together. I've got somebody who's also in the industry who's taking his whole family to Bali for the summer. I mean, just how cool is that to be able to go and do all of these different things, you know? And then I was listening to a podcast as well this morning where the chap was talking about writing books. He's a very successful writer. And he said what he does is he literally goes and hires, you know, a place in his local town for a week and just goes and, you know, so he can separate himself. So I think there's just so many more ways that people look at these kind of Airbnb rather than just the old traditional ways. So I certainly see it as definitely a growth industry still. I still think it's very new, and there's just so many untapped markets, I think, that people can grow. Now, obviously, there are some oversaturations, and you've got to be really careful. And that's where, you know, doing your due diligence, which I'm really, you know, passionate about. So yeah, I like that. So Michelle has just said, I got my first viewing on a rent-to-rent SA prospect tomorrow. Oh, fantastic. Very exciting.
Congratulations.
It's really exciting, isn't it? Any tips? Well, for me, I don't know about you, Jodie, but I would just say just learn as much as you can from the industry. So people like what Jodie's doing with her book, when she, you know, launching her hospitable host accreditation. I definitely would always go into something like this with knowledge, with education, and perhaps support as well. I think that's so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is key. Don't try and fumble your way through it. I know for me, when I say it just worked, but I did have that background, you know, with my career that I'd had when I was younger. So, and with your question, Michelle, do you mean you'd like some tips on how to get the landlord to give you the property? Is that the tip that you're asking for? Because that's something I had to learn.
Well, we'll see if she can respond there. Another thing that Tima has put is, how long does it take for a property to be established as an Airbnb? How long should I give it? So I don't know. You respond first, and then I think I've got
for it to be established. Okay, we'll go back to Michelle afterwards. But for it to be established as an Airbnb, well, firstly, you have to say that you are a property manager, or you're not an Airbnb owner. You're going to use Airbnb as your platform for marketing your property. So when your property is up and running, that's when you're ready to welcome guests. That's when you're ready. If you've got a property, you need to do it as fast as you can so you can start making some income. Listed on Airbnb, listed on VRBO, some of the other big OTAs. Like, don't just stick with Airbnb. Find out which one works for you. I know I had all my properties on all of the platforms, but I get 98% of my bookings through Airbnb. So that's where I focus. And then, of course, having a book direct website, that's always good. So, I think and established as an Airbnb, it's really up to you to just quickly get it up and ready. 2 weeks. I can do mine in 4 days. So
definitely. And I would say, Tima, I'm just a huge fan of not just giving it a go. is to, you know, if you are, you know, starting from fresh and from scratch, and you can basically choose anywhere. I always say choose local, but really do the research in all of those areas, because you'll have some areas that are already, you know, really very oversaturated potentially for what you're offering, or it may be that you're offering something totally different, and you know that is a real gap in the market, and that's what I would suggest. So I always want to go forward not hoping. I think hope in business is not a very healthy way. We want to be able to eat, we want to be able to feed our family. So definitely I would say not how long does it take, but how long does it take to do all that due diligence first, to ensure that you're literally 98% sure that when you jump ahead that you're going to be able to do that. So so Michelle has said, it's my first viewing after lots of phone calls. They agreed to the viewing knowing that I have done lots of research, just worrying about saying right or wrong things. So Jodie, you said some great feedback for that.
Yeah, well, firstly, I would not say that you're going to be renting it out on Airbnb, because Airbnb has negative thoughts in a lot of people's heads. So you could say that you're a property manager and you're going to host corporate clients, you're going to host holiday guests. I'm not sure what your market would be, but that would be the biggest thing I would say. Like, don't say that you're going to be renting it out on Airbnb. If they ask you, of course, you want to be open, because they'll probably find it on Airbnb themselves if they do their due diligence. But focus on the things like, you know, that the property will be professionally cleaned and maintained. I know for me, I got a grade 2 listed building with 5 apartments in it. And my landlord was a bit nervous because he'd never done that before. And we were having a meeting and he got called out to one of his other tenants. And he went over, he said, you know, I'll be back in 10 minutes. And he came back and the tenant had not been able to flush the toilet for 6 months. And when he flushed the toilet, it came up through the bath. And the landlord couldn't believe that that's what, you know, was happening in his property. And so I simply said to him, now, if you rented that to me, that wouldn't happen, because I'd be losing business. So, you know, really focus on how good you're going to look after the property. Professionally cleaned every couple of days. You'll be in there. You'll be looking at it. Focus on, you know, you take bonds, you research the guests that are coming in, all of those things. I think that's, but just don't focus on Airbnb, because as soon as you say that, they're like, no, we don't want it. We don't want anyone in our property on it through Airbnb. But
yeah, you know. Absolutely. And I think, Michelle, if you look back in my YouTube channel, I've got a really great interview that I did as well, which would be worth going to listen to. It was all about rent to rent hacks. And that's got some great tips as well in that. So yeah, just go and jump on that. And then Tima, I think this will be our final question. Said something about, I'm trying to, she says that her management company charges a deposit and also asks for ID. So yeah, yeah, do you want to comment on that, Jodie?
They charge.
She's seeing that as not as a positive thing.
Yeah, no, I think it is a positive thing. Definitely, you've got to protect yourself. You know, I ask guests for a deposit. I ask them for their ID, and out of the thousands of guests that I've hosted, I can say only 5 people have objected to giving me their ID, and they'll be a little bit funny about it. And they'll say, you know, we've already given Airbnb our ID. And I said, yes, but I just say it's a requirement for my insurance company. It's actually not, but I do say that. And I said, you've got to understand, I'm about to give you the keys to my 500-year-old property, and all you can do is give me your ID so I know who's coming to stay. And I think I've only had one that's just flatly refused. So I refuse them to stay, because I think if they don't want to give you their information, there's maybe something going on there that is a bit untoward. So you've got to protect yourself. So yeah, I don't think it's bad at all.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Jodie. I just talk about the fact that I'm protecting them, and that, you know, we're protecting our own interests, and it's just really key that we understand who's coming to stay, you know, blah blah blah. And it's not like, you know, yeah, I think it's just really, really important. So yeah, go along with that. I think they're doing a good job for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jodie, that's amazing. You are just such an amazing fountain of knowledge. I'm so inspired by what you've created. You know, what started off as just a book of bringing people together and sort of helping inspire people. It's like snowballed into this enormous kind of its own little industry of being a hospitable host in whatever way, shape and form. And I just think it's really tremendous. I'm really very, very excited to be following this.
Thank you.
So tell everyone, you know, where can they find you? We'll put some you know, some links out as well. So yeah, where can they find you? What would you like them to go, kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, you can buy the book from Amazon. So if you just go onto amazon.co.uk or in your marketplace and just put Hospitable Host, you'll see that we have the first volume is an Audible book, as well as the Kindle version, and then the paperback. And the other 2 volumes are paperback and Kindle version. So that's where you can find the book. To get in contact with me, you can do that through Instagram. It's just at Hospitable Hosts. Or the website is hospitablehost.com. It has everything on there that we as a collective group, we call ourselves a movement of professionals in the short-term rental world. You can go on there and see who all the authors are. You can get in contact with them, and you can see some of the other projects that we're doing. We have a podcast that will be starting on the 1st of July. We've got 2 episodes a week coming out, which that's going to be really interesting. So it's all the authors are interviewing each other. It's not just one host. So everything that I do with Hospitable Hosts is all as a collective. We're an extremely collaborative group of people, and you know, some of them have got together in the States and they're buying hotels together, and we have retreats and conferences and all sorts of things coming up. So there's a lot going on. So if you just keep an eye on those 2 things, the website and the Instagram page, you'll be able to follow what we're doing. So yeah, it's exciting. Lots of exciting things happening.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited that we managed to squeeze this in. I know you're going back to Australia, and so the timings wouldn't have been but
yeah, no, they weren't. Yeah, no,
so that was really
good.
Yeah,
it was brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much. We've had lots and lots of questions here, so really, really appreciate that interaction. It's quite fun, even though, Tima, I was kind of slightly thrown earlier on, so apologies for that. But yeah, thank you again, Jodie. Really, really appreciate your time here. And yeah, just look forward to you know, following on. And I know we're talking as well with the launch of my book, so I'm hoping that we might be able to work together. So yeah, that would be great.
And Tima, yes, one day you will. You can come and share your story. That's exactly how it works. Everyone has a story to share, and it's unique, and it will resonate with somebody, and that's a really big part of why I'm doing this, to help motivate others. So thank you, Emma. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and your audience as well. And it's really special. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank